Week 4 might have been the best week of the college football season. There were so many close games and finishes, along with a number of ranked teams getting knocked off. We have some movement and some new teams entering the rankings. After the 4th week of the college football season, here is my personal top 25 ballot. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'll be posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. This one was a little too close for comfort, but Georgia picked up the victory over Kent State. The Bulldogs were a 45-point favorite, but found themselves up by only 10 midway through the 4th quarter. Brock Bowers had himself quite the day as he rushed for 2 touchdowns with 75 yards on the ground. He also caught 5 passes for 60 yards. Not a pretty game for Georgia, but you gotta give major props to Kent State for hanging around in this one and making things interesting. Alabama won with ease, taking down Vanderbilt by 50+ points. Bryce Young was great once again as he threw for 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. As a team, the Tide rushed for 230 yards with 3 scores. For the game, Alabama had 500 more yards than Vanderbilt and 25 more first downs. Just another week for the Tide. There was never a doubt in this one as Ohio State wiped the floor with Wisconsin, beating them by 30. Ever since week 1, this Buckeye offense has been one of the best in the entire nation. They put up more than 500 yards of offense once again. CJ Stroud threw 5 touchdown passes on only 17 completions. Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams each rushed for over 100 yards. It's tough to see how Ohio State is going to lose a game with the way their offense and their defense have been playing through the first 4 weeks. The Wolverines picked up the win over Maryland, but this was a game that was a lot closer than they would have liked. They beat the Terps by 1 touchdown as this was a close back and forth game throughout the 4th quarter. JJ McCarthy threw for 220 yards with 2 touchdowns. Blake Corum carried the offense on the ground as he rushed for 250 yards with 2 scores. This was the first tough matchup for the Wolverines in 2022, so we finally got to see how they looked against a decent team. It looked like Clemson was going to lose this one, but they managed to pull off the come-from-behind victory on the road in double overtime at Wake Forest. DJ Uiagalelei had the best game of his career as he threw for 370 yards with 5 passing touchdowns while rushing for 50 yards. The Tigers seem to be left out of a lot of playoff discussions, but they sure looked like a playoff team in this game. The Trojans escaped a close one in Corvallis as they took down Oregon State by only 3 points. 14 of USC's 17 points came in the 4th quarter as they rallied to come from behind and avoid the upset. Caleb Williams wasn't great as he completed less than 50% of his passes, but he delivered the game-winning touchdown to Jordan Addison when it mattered most. It wasn't a pretty game, but USC's defense stepped up big when they needed to, as they forced 4 huge turnovers. USC also didn't turn over the ball as well, as they still have 0 turnovers on the season. The Cowboys had a bye this week, so we'll have them right here. The Vols nearly had a scare at the end, as they almost had an epic collapse in the final few minutes, but they still held on to beat the Gators. Hendon Hooker did it all for Tennessee as he threw for 350 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while leading the team in rushing with 110 yards on the ground and a rushing score. This Tennessee team continues to pump out wins as they're 4-0 for the first time since 2016. The Wolfpack handled UConn with ease, winning by 31. Devin Leary threw for 320 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. After they nearly lost in week 1, NC State has bounced back nicely and is 4-0 to begin the season. This one was over before kickoff, but a game had to be played. Utah beat Arizona State by 21, and the Sun Devils never even stood a chance. Cameron Rising threw for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. As a team, the Utes rushed for over 200 yards with 2 rushing scores. The defense held ASU to only 15 first downs and fewer than 270 total yards. Had it not been for that stupid decision from Cameron Rising in week 1 against Florida, this Utah team would be undefeated and likely ranked inside the top 6. The Nittany Lions took care of Central Michigan, beating them by 20 points. Sean Clifford threw for over 200 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Penn State's defense forced 4 turnovers, which ended up being the difference maker in this game, as the Chippewas hung around for a while. Penn State moves to 4-0 on the season for the 2nd straight year. After losing to Appalachian State at home, the Aggies have responded with with two very impressive wins over top 15 teams. After falling behind by 14 in the first quarter, A&M outscored Arkansas 23-7 to close out the game. Devon A-Chain led the way with 160 yards on the ground with a rushing score. After their season looked to be over with that upset a few weeks back, Texas A&M is right back in the SEC and playoff hunt with this win. This one seriously was over for the Ducks. They were trailing by 12 points with 3.5 minutes remaining, but they somehow pulled off the crazy comeback, shocking Wazoo by 3. Bo Nix had another fantastic game as his solid stretch since the Georgia matchup continues. He led the comeback for the Ducks, throwing for a career-high 430 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. After their Week 1 embarrassment, this Oregon team has looked dominant over their last 3 games. The Wildcats picked up a close win over Northern Illinois, winning by only 8. This game was tight at the end of the first half, but Kentucky pulled away in the second half. Will Levis threw for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. They were favored to win by 26 points, so struggling with Northern Illinois certainly isn't a great look. But they're 4-0 on the season. The Rebels won, but they had a tough time putting away Tulsa as they beat them by only 8 points. Ole Miss didn't score at all in the second half, and it was a one-possession game for the entire fourth quarter. The Rebels scored 4 touchdowns in the second quarter, but didn't do much outside of that. The Rebels were favored by 21, so not ideal that they let Tulsa hang around in this game for as long as they did. But they're 4-0 on the season for the first time since 2015. The Bears were in control of this one all day as they took down undefeated Iowa State on the road by 7. Blake Shapen threw 3 touchdown passes, and this offense looked solid once again. This was an Iowa State team I thought could potentially upset the Bears, so props to Baylor for handling this one from start to finish. Outside of their last second loss to BYU a few weeks ago, it's been a very impressive start to the season for Baylor. The Razorbacks blew their chances in this one as they lost to Texas A&M by 2 points. With less than 2 minutes left, Arkansas missed what would have been the go-ahead field goal. Earlier in the game, KJ Jefferson turned it over for what was the game-changing fumble. On the goal line, he dove for a touchdown but fumbled it. A&M picked it up and took it 99 yards for a 14-point swing that completely shifted momentum in the game. After taking a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, Arkansas was outscored 23-7 the rest of the way. With Alabama next week, this was just a brutal loss for the Razorbacks. After looking like a playoff threat early on, the Sooners fell once again to Kansas State. This is the 3rd time in the last 4 years the Wildcats have upset the Sooners. Dylan Gabriel threw for over 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, and as an offense, the Sooners totaled 550 yards with 26 first downs. But that just wasn't enough to outdo the Wildcats. This is a rough loss for Oklahoma in regards to the Big 12 standings. The Huskies continued their impressive start to the season by moving to 4-0 with their win over Stanford. They've scored 40 points in every game this season and have looked great on both sides of the ball. Michael Penix Jr. continued his hot start to the season as he threw for over 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. The Indiana transfer has been huge for the Huskies as it's looking like they're a legitimate threat in the Pac-12. The impossible just continues to happen as the Kansas Jayhawks move to 4-0 on the season for the first time since 2009. And I think it's safe to say now that this Jayhawks team is legit. They took down Duke behind the play of their Heisman caliber quarterback, Jalen Daniels. He completed 19 of 23 passes for 325 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. He also led the team with 83 yards on the ground with a rushing score. This is the best story so far of the college football season, as this Kansas team has come out of nowhere to climb into the top 25. After not winning 4 games in 13 seasons, the Jayhawks not only have a shot at their first bowl game in over a decade, but they legitimately might be contending for the Big 12. The Cougars bounced back nicely after a rough loss last week as they defeated Wyoming by 14. Jaron Hall was nearly perfect as he completed 26 of 32 passes for 340 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. The Cougars get an easy win next week against Utah State before a tough 2-game slate with Notre Dame and Arkansas. For the 3rd time in the last 4 years, Kansas State took down Oklahoma. This game belonged to Adrian Martinez as he had the game of his career. He threw for 230 yards with a passing touchdown, but did most of his damage on the ground. Martinez rushed for 150 yards with 4 rushing touchdowns. If it wasn't for their late loss last week to Tulane, this would be a Wildcats team that would be 4-0. Don't look now, but the Seminoles are 4-0 through the first month of the season. They dominated Boston College, beating them by 30 points. This game was out of reach early on as it was 31-0 at the half. It's tough not to get too ahead of ourselves, but Florida State has looked pretty solid this season. Maybe this is finally the year they're back to competing in the ACC. The Golden Gophers moved to 4-0 on the season after their dominating win over Michigan State. This should have been a 34-0 game, but the Spartans snuck in a touchdown right at the end. Tanner Morgan was nearly perfect with only 3 incompletions, throwing for 270 yards with 3 touchdowns. Muhammad Ibrahim rushed for 100 yards for the 4th straight game and scored a touchdown as well. The Gophers' defense completely shut out this offense as they held the Spartans to essentially nothing. Michigan State rushed for only 38 yards for the game and had only 14 first downs. At this point, it looks like Minnesota is a near guarantee to play in the Big Ten title game. The Red Raiders picked up their first win against a ranked team since 2008, when they also beat Texas. They should have won this game in regulation, but they still managed to pick up the win in overtime. Donovan Smith is a quarterback on the rise as he finished with 38 completions for 330 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. He also rushed for 40 yards with a rushing score as well. For the game, Texas Tech converted 6 of 8 attempts on 4th down, which proved to be the difference maker in the game as they kept a number of drives alive. It's been a very solid start to the season for Texas Tech as they're now 3-1 and 1-0 in Big 12 play. Well, there's my top 25 after week 4. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the rankings. Was there a team I had ranked too high, or a team that was ranked too low, or was there a team not even on this list that should have been included in here? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know down in the comments. Before you leave, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'll be posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.